and welcome to the Real Life Sports Show. This podcast is for sports fans, whether you're playing it, interested in it, or looking to learn from high achievers. My name is Sam Adams. I'm known as the Real Life Coach. I'm a business owner and a life coach, and I work with sports professionals, athletes, coaches, and people in and around the industry. I help those people live more expansively, more authentically, so that they can enhance their performance, whether that's playing their game or living their real life. My background is in business. I've been in business for over 20 years in property. I've mentored and coached in that industry, and that led me into being a life coach. I'm super passionate about sports, and that's what led me to working in that industry and creating this podcast. In this podcast, I'm going to be talking to some amazing human beings, some elite athletes and people from that industry. We're going to be talking about the glory, the glamour, the achievements and the medals, but we're also going to go to the real life bit, behind the scenes, what it really takes to excel. We're going to talk about the guts, the determination, the grit and the grime. For you, the listener, you're going to get some great takeaways and insight, whether you're looking to achieve for yourself around your mindset or your personal development. This is the podcast for you. So, if you enjoy the podcast, I'd love for you to leave me a 5-star review and any comments you have. So here we go, the Real Life Sports Show. So welcome everybody. Yes, you are in the Real Life Show. You're listening to the Real Life Show with me, Sam Adams. And today I've got another awesome guest for you. Just set aside 30 minutes of your time, get a cuppa, and enjoy this interesting conversation that I know that I'm about to have. The amazing, and this man I met on Clubhouse very recently. I love his style, I love his strategy, and I thought he would be super awesome for this podcast. So please welcome Andrew Sillitoe.
Hello, Sam. Thank you so much for inviting me on your amazing podcast. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
No, it's awesome to have you on here. Once I started, obviously we met, our paths crossed on Clubhouse, this latest audio drop-in app that we're all spending hours of our time on. Yeah. And I think you resonated with me just reading your bio, but then listening to some of your insight and value that you've been offering in Clubhouse. It just drew me to you and thought, no, I need to get this guy on my podcast, because I think, your messages, your method, your strategy and the value that you bring, I think more people just kind of need to hear it. So I'm hoping that those kind of people are now listening to this and will enjoy our conversation. So why don't you tell me, rather than me explain, who is Andrew Sillitoe?
Okay, so I am a business psychologist and I predominantly work with business owners, done a lot of corporate work as well in leadership, and mainly work with business owners who are looking to reset their life, if you like. They've been all in their career, and now they know they've got a 10 or 15 year plan, but they want to do it without wrecking their health, wrecking their marriage, wrecking their mindset. And so that's when I talk about the 4 keys. I wrote a book called The 4 Keys. So it's really about managing balance between business, body, relationships, and mindset, and making sure that we're keeping that in sync each day. I'm a former international athlete and coach. So my background was playing roller hockey. So I grew up playing roller hockey. I live in the southeast of England, but street hockey was big in the 80s. So caught that and the roller disco. And I was just really lucky, that I just caught a wave with that. And as the sport developed in the 90s, we all switched to rollerblades and the sport went pro in America. So I kind of set my sights on that, and I became the first British player to play professionally in the US. That was in 98, 99. Right. And then when I returned from Canada, I started playing ice hockey here. And then also, so I played semi-professionally ice hockey here in the UK. I now live in Prague, so I get to play all the time open because they have so much hockey here. And then I played in 11 World Championships for the British team, inline hockey or roll hockey, whatever you want to call it. And then in 2010 became the head coach. And that put me on a whole different trajectory into leadership and really learning about how to create a high performance culture. I'd kind of knew about it because I was working in that field. I was already working in corporate doing leadership work. But when I worked when you're in that locker room, it's a completely different dynamic to working even with at board level. There are some similarities.
Yeah, there are.
There's certainly high expectations when you walk in that locker room for the first time as the head coach, particularly as Team GB were struggling. You know, we lost to Australia the year before. We were nearly relegated from Pool B. I had an ambition to get us into the top 8 countries in the world. The players thought I was crazy. But the long and short of it was, and I wrote about this in one of my books, is that we went on to achieve just an incredible results. We went up to the top 8 countries in the world for the first time. We beat Finland, who we'd watched in the final, you know, as fans, you know, and then we were out there playing against Finland for the first time and beat them. We tied with the Czechs, who were the world champions at the time. I mean, it was just an extraordinary experience. So now those worlds have sort of come together, where I teach leadership, teach the principles that I shared with what we built with Team GB, and also because of my purpose around well-being, those kind of worlds have come together as well. So I'm very passionate about helping business owners think about their well-being, and that's mainly because when I was 16, you know, my father he'd made a lot of money, good business owner, but in a 1990 crash, he lost it all, and then 3 years later, died of a sudden heart attack, age 48. Wow. So that's always been on my mind, you know. So, and also seeing that similar trajectory in other business owners. Yeah. And ironically, experiencing it myself, coming home one day and my wife turned to me and said, I didn't sign up for this. And at that time, I was the head coach of Team GB with a gold medal around my neck. I'd written a book. I was traveling the world, delivering these leadership programs. And yeah, my wife said, no, that's not what we agreed. We need to rein this in a bit. And actually, you know, that was kind of a bit of a really blindsided me, and also my health was just deteriorating. I was suffering with gout, and my family joke that it's the only thing my dad left me, because I seem to have inherited. My dad was really tough. You know, he didn't complain about anything. And we laughed at him when he had gout, because it's the only time he complained. He would be crawling along the floor.
It's so painful, apparently. You know,
and then, I ended up inheriting it, they say. And so I was really checking in with all of that. So that all came together. And that's why I wrote the book, The 4 Keys, started sharing it with other people. So in a long-winded way, my sports background, working with elite athletes, trying to build my own business, scale my own business, seeing this challenge that, you know, I saw it in business owners where they were struggling to balance their life, and then kind of turning the mirror on myself and going, actually, this is not easy. You know, regardless of what business if you've got kids at home, you're trying to do, you know, balance your health. So that's become my focus now, you know, bringing all that together and really helping business owners scale and to try and do that without burning themselves out.
Yeah. Wow. What a potted history.
Yeah, it is potted. Yeah.
Some real highs and the gouts are probably a low. But
about it.
Yeah, incredible story. I mean, I want to talk a little bit about the hockey, because that, you know, like, that is unusual. It's incredible being the first British player as well, and to go across to Canada. What was that? Were you naturally sporty as a kid anyway? Was it, or?
No, I wasn't. In fact, my father-in-law, who was Jock, the only Scotsman in Tunbridge Wells, of course, and he kind of took me under his wing when my father died. They were really good friends. And Jock had a gym in his garage, and we always knew Jock trained a lot, and his 2 sons, they were into judo. But when I used to go around there as a child, and they kind of, I think they just sort of gave up. I just wasn't that athletic. You know, I wasn't naturally athletic when I compare myself to some of the other lads, and probably because I was just a late developer more than anything. But when my father died, I started taking my training more seriously, and Jock was really helpful in helping me understand specific training. So we started looking at hockey and saying, well, what are some of the things we need to be focusing on? So, you know, back then we were doing CrossFit style training. I mean, unfortunately he passed away as well, but before the kind of CrossFit scene. But we always joke, you know, and say that he would have loved the CrossFit scene, because he had us doing that kind of work in the gym. It was all very much a lot of movement, a lot of leg work, a lot of sprints, you know, carrying each other up hills and all these kind of things, but very focused on hockey. And within about a year, I was playing in Germany for it's like a club tournament, and someone was watching that from the UK and spotted me, and then invited me to play on a team called London All Stars, which is an all-paid trip to Florida. I mean,
oh, cool.
It was just like a fantasy in some ways, to do that. And it was like all paid for. I mean, he even took us to Wet and Wild. We did everything in Florida. I mean, it was an amazing trip. But I put that down to and I was the youngest by quite a long way. A lot of the guys were in their early 20s, mid 20s. And at that time I was 17. So I recognized that I was starting to develop as an athlete. And also I was starting to come of age. But Jock always has said to me, you've trained yourself to be an athlete. And it was kind of a polite way of saying you were not an athlete as a kid.
Yeah.
And I think, I loved football. I was skillful at sports. In hockey, I'm known for my hands, and I think, soft hands with the puck and my skating, but I had to work so hard at it. But I think, over time, I just found my way combining my skill with physical ability. And then when I moved to Canada when I was 21, and then that opened my whole world up, because we just didn't have gyms like that in the UK. These big, huge gyms. A lot of emphasis on nutrition, which was predominantly chicken and rice, which was revolutionary at the time. But I was training every day. I had people working with me. There were other, players on Team Canada that were training, and I was really just immersed myself in that. And when I came back to the UK, people were like, Sillitoe's been on steroids, because look at the size of him. Because
right.
I'd really gained some size. But I think it was just when you go from 19 to 21, 22, you do,
naturally.
Yeah, you sort of fill out, and with the training and the diet and everything. So when I came back, I really had kind of positioned myself as a well-known player in our micro niche sport, if you like. And then I started going back to Canada, and I was playing a lot in California, just having a wild time. And then but also my entrepreneurial spirit was kind of blossoming, because I was running summer camps for kids. So I was coaching. I'd set up a coaching business, and we were running these summer camps, residential summer camps for kids to come and join us, and bring in coaches from the US and Spain. And again, I mean, even that was just fueling my hockey career, really, because even though I say I played professionally, which is true, the sport wasn't big enough to pay my bills, if you know what I mean. So sure. I would get sponsors. Although my claim to fame is I was the first Nike athlete in roller hockey as well.
Oh, really?
Nike started making equipment.
Oh, okay.
And I must have been quite into my PR then as well, because I put this, I've still got it at home, but a book of my accolades, and I'd sent it to Newcastle saying, I hear you're creating hockey stuff. And they responded straight away, said, yeah, we are creating hockey stuff, and we are looking for athletes. Brilliant. And they paid for me to go up to Newcastle to see them. And so that was interesting times, kind of being in that corporate world with sports. And I was, I'd be walking around town like head to toe. And I just couldn't get enough of the stuff on me, like I was so proud of it.
Yeah, why not? To be fair, I would have been as well. I had this big
puffer jacket, and, shoes, glasses, everything.
The gear.
Yeah. So to answer your question, was I a natural athlete? Definitely not. I had to work really hard at it.
Yeah.
And although some things I have learned about sports and training, that less is more, because I'm 45 this year. I would say I'm probably leaner. I feel better. I'm still playing hockey competitively. I'm playing in a good league here in the Czech Republic.
Amazing.
It's amateur, but when you say amateur here, you've got guys that decided not to pursue the career, and they play. So it's a good level of hockey, and some ex-NHL players. And it amazes me, that managing inflammation in the body and through diet. Yeah. One was because of my, trying to understand gout and what it is. Yeah. And also just recognizing that we don't have to kill ourselves in the gym to be healthy. And actually we can do quite little subtle things, to stay fit, healthy and strong.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the kettlebell. I wish I'd been as passionate about the kettlebell in my early 20s, but it was all about bench press and deadlifts,
Do you not think these things go through cycles, those, and what's the in thing then is, maybe that will come back round again.
Quite trendy.
At
the moment.
Trends, aren't they?
COVID as well, that got a lot of people into the kettlebell. But I noticed that I can do a lot with a lighter weight, and it's my mobility is better. I don't feel as in pain, like leg days, that kind of whole thing.
Dead legs, yeah.
My child was changing nappies and saying, leg day today. I don't know, I can get down that, which is crazy, right? I mean, it's silliness. But so anyway, less is more, and I've learned a lot about training over the years, and I feel like I feel better today than at 44 than I did at 24, if I'm honest. That's
amazing, and it doesn't surprise me in some ways, because I've spoken to a few athletes and sort of retired and gone on, and Dame Kelly Holmes, for instance, she is like, I mean, she was fit back then, but honestly, she is super fit, and she's 50. Yeah. She won't appreciate me telling everyone how old she is because she hates that. But anyway, she's like incredibly fit and lean now, and she's 50. There's another. I can't think I was talking to now, but same kind of scenario. So it doesn't surprise me. I
think it's something about experience as well, isn't there? Knowing your body as we develop, and we're going to see more and more athletes in late 30s, early 40s, because they know how to look after themselves, and we've seen other people lead the way who are going to do well. And I'm sure Kelly would probably say, she was brilliant and fit at the 800 meters, but not necessarily fit at other things, that because the body is not always feeling great. So we know we can do that thing really well. Yeah. But I think as we get older, we start to think, actually, there's other things I want to be able to do, whether people want to choose to play golf or play five-a-side football or run a half marathon, to be able to do these kind of multiple of things, be a bit more of a generalist as we get older. I think there's something about that. And I think level of intuition.
And when you're playing one particular sport, like for you, the hockey, and Kelly, the 800 meters or whatever, that's your laser focus, really, isn't it? It's being the best you can be at that sport, that track and field event, whatever it is. Whereas, as you get, a certain age, it's your general health, your mindset, as well as your general well-being, isn't it? And you are more conscious about, or hopefully, about everything, and it does become about flexibility. It does become, as you get older, sadly, it just does. And your bones and your joints, and, I think about all of those things, so I totally get that. But I do want to kind of ask you about, to play at that level. Now, I know it wasn't like, back then. It's, what's the first question, the difference between the hockey now and what it was for you back then? How different are the worlds apart?
So from a like the level, or I would say, so when I was playing pro in the tournaments, so we had these kind of pro series, the level was very high because players were getting paid to come from ice hockey, like professional ice hockey, and play roller hockey. So there was a lot more investment actually in the 90s. So we often say that the level was incredibly high. So the fact that I got to play in that genre, if you like, that kind of era, I'm very grateful, because I was, I talk about this with, you might know Will Polston, I don't know, we've seen him in Clubhouse. And he always asked me to share the story, where I talked about how I had a magazine of Victor Gervais, who was a Canadian player, on my wall. And I get goosebumps when I think about it. But in 2004, when I played in the professional division, I went down for the face-off, where they dropped the puck. Yeah. And I looked up, and I didn't know he was playing, but he was at the face-off. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's Victor Gervais. I had him on my wall for years, And at that time, I think he was probably 35 playing. Yeah. That team who came in, and they were the kind of all the new era, the young guns coming in, that team won. They won the tournament, and they were all in their late sort of mid-30s, veterans really. So it kind of proved to me that the level then, because of the investment that was being made in sport was very high. But now you look at it now and the speed that these guys are skating at, there is a significant increase in that level. The equipment's got, the technology in the wheels. It's better, so they can, similar to ice hockey in that way, and the traction on the rinks. Yeah, and the shooting ability, and because the equipment and the technology in the sticks.
Yeah.
When I was back then, it was wooden, maybe carbon sticks. Now the technology is unbelievable. I mean, the stick literally does a lot of the work for you when you shoot because of the way it flexes and stuff like that. So without getting too technical, but the way the puck travels and moves, and so that has definitely shifted because of the technology.
It does.
Just same.
It is, yeah. Tennis. I was talking to Jan the other day, and we were talking about tennis and the changes in tennis, and it's 20 years. It's such a long time.
Wooden rackets to aluminium to carbon. Now. Yeah.
It's the same with track shoes. You're looking at track shoes now that the athletes wear. I was all about athletics when I grew up, but even 10 years ago to now, track shoes, spikes, now it's massively different. And there's loads of controversy around that at the moment as well. So, the technology does change so quickly. So it's interesting to know. Did you feel like, around that time, because this podcast is about what it takes to be an elite athlete. And also, you obviously work with those kind of people, high achievers, pro sports people, all high achievers, what it takes. Now, for you, there wasn't necessarily the skill, that innate ability to be athletic, but you definitely had a lot of will and you put a lot of grind in. What are your thoughts around mindset over that athletic ability? Where do the two meet, cross over? What did
it's
you
a really
need
good question.
to do?
I think there are certain sports that you can get away with being a late developer. Hockey's one of those, I think, where if you look at Conor McDavid, who's arguably the best player in the world, very slim, he's quick, but you wouldn't have looked at him at 14, 15 and said he's going to make the NHL, the National Hockey League. I wonder with track and field whether it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because I think there is an advantage for a 14, 15-year-old. So having said that, you can be the most athletic person, naturally gifted, athletic, physically, but without the right mindset, then you're going to be at a disadvantage. So for me, it always comes back to 80% mindset, 10% skill, 10% knowledge, experience, because you can have all the knowledge and experience in the world, or the skill, talent, but the mindset in the end is going to be the difference, I believe.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. That's where I come from. I totally believe that. Like I always say, you can have all the skill in the world, but if you've got no will, it's a waste of time. It's absolutely waste of time. Absolutely. So, how do you, because you've got your methods about how you help high achievers and sports people. Tell us a little bit about that. You've got your 4 keys and things like that. Tell us a little bit about your work and how you help people.
Yeah, well, I suppose if we focus on the mindset, so the 4 keys is business, body, relationships, mindset. And what I'm noticing is that we're still spending a lot more time on mindset, whether it's a business owner or an athlete. And for me, there are 3 parts to the mindset, and that is clarity of purpose. And what I mean by that is the ability to serve something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And it's such an important thing for young athletes, particularly in team sports, is that they can often go into survival mode. But once they recognize that they're there to serve everybody in the dressing room and not themselves, they get out their own heads and they can focus on helping the players around them improve. So that was one of our goals with Team GB, is it's not about you. It's about how do you give more time on the puck. So that purpose, that clarity of purpose, what are we trying to achieve here together?
Picking up on that point, because it is a really valid point, and it's I've worked with some footballers, and it's really challenging for them, the pressure, because they go into this team and it's a team, right? But you've got 2 or 3 other people that are playing the same position of you, and therefore it's a competition, it feels like. So what do you do? How did you do it with Team GB? Because surely there was other people that had the same role potentially, and
some players on the bench, right?
Yeah. So how did you create that? Because that is a really valid point. You were all there to lift each other, to improve each other, and to improve as a whole. But equally, there's that competitiveness still going on within the team.
Yeah, well, I always say that creating a high performance culture is a process, and the first step in that is deciding what is the objective, the vision.
Yeah.
And for us, that was quite obvious, as it was for every team in Pool B, which is win gold, get promoted into Pool A. Okay, so every team's going to want to do that. But yeah, we looked at how do we look, act, and feel like Pool A players, just more athletic, more focused, better training, all the things that they would have. How could we as an amateur team incorporate that into our world? And the purpose then became, well, what if we could inspire young British players that GB could play in the top 8 countries of the world? And then that became our drive. So it wasn't just about winning gold. It was about something much bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Reverse engineering it from the idea of looking, acting, and feeling like a Pool A team. And then what we started looking at were our values. So getting really clear on our values. And we were quite lucky at the time that we partnered with a company, and they'd launched some values in their corporate, some corporate values, and we adopted them.
Yeah.
And when I shared them with the players, there's always this funny situation, because I'd been going on about, one of the values was rapport, got to be in rapport.
Yeah.
After about 4 weeks, one of the players plucked up the courage to say, what does rapport mean? It's kind of like hockey players in a dressing room.
Yeah.
One of those scenarios. But so we kind of said, well, what does it mean? What does, with these 4 words that we've got on our jerseys, mean? So we started to really ask that question. What does it mean for us?
Yeah.
And we did an exercise where above the line behaviors, below the line behaviors, because even in a dressing room, you've got players who take banter too far.
Yeah.
And you've got players who are offended by that banter.
Yeah.
We really draw the line. We had the north-south divide, all of that kind of stuff going on. Players who are just naturally more sensitive.
Yeah.
And being mindful of that. So once we got really clear on our contract in the dressing room, what the behaviors we like to see and what the behaviors we don't want to see, we created psychological safety, because everybody felt safe that it wasn't going to go too far. And my role as head coach then was to enforce that and hold some accountability around that. So that was a big change for us, because you could see then the players were feeling safer. The other thing that I embraced, which took me a bit of time, was the ask, don't tell. No, never beaten Austria before, never played in Pool A. How do we do this? And getting the players to really come forward with the tactics and the ideas. Right, try it, test it, let's see it. And what I learned is that, it's that adage of tell me and I forget, show me and I remember, involve me and I understand. If you really want your players to execute the tactics, get them to, even if it's not necessarily coming up with the ideas, but at least playing it back to you, so I know that you truly understand. Talk me through it. Help me understand what you're going to do. What's your intent? Rather than, here's the board, guys, go do it. And that's when coaches lose their minds, because they're like, I've shown you 5 times.
Yeah.
Tell me and I forget, So you always get the nod from the players, but you've really got to get them talking and breaking out and having their own little masterminds, of, okay, we have a problem here with this tactic. I want you 4 to go over there, get the board out and work through, report back to me what you're going to do next.
Yeah.
They go away, they do it. Then we're trying to, so they're constantly owning it. And that was, I think, probably the biggest game changer. So I think there's probably the purpose, clarity of vision, psychological safety in the dressing room, and ownership of actions, and then accountability, me being ruthless on accountability, not holding back on that, because, hey, we've agreed it. It's in black and white on this flip chart here.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, you guys came up with, not me.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing. And then the other thing, what I see in athletes, top performers, clarity of purpose, clarity of self. So my strengths, weaknesses, motivations, and then clarity under pressure.
Yeah.
Ability to manage thoughts, feelings, and emotions under pressure, to make good decisions, and develop it. So we did a lot of work around that. A lot of work around how to get into the zone. What are our triggers? What stops us from thinking clearly, not just on the rink, but in the dressing room, all these, the environment, really thinking about the stimuli. And the players really bought into that. They loved getting into the deeper psychology around that without getting too woo-woo with them. It was, as long as we kept it practical, they really enjoyed the science, the neuroscience, if you like, of all of that. So I don't know if that kind of helps, but for me, clarity of purpose, clarity of self, clarity of under pressure.
No, that's amazing.
Ingredients for me.
No, that's incredible. And what you did was incredible, and everyone bought into it. And that was an incredible journey.
It really was, and that I still speak to the head coach at Czech Republic, and he still says to me, if only we could have some of that Britishness, because people do look to Great Britain sometimes. And
really,
for that effort, that work rate, there's something there.
Yeah.
Whether it was just a sweep step, but he said to me, "How did you do it?" And that's when I walked away and thought, "Yeah, how did we do it?" And then I reflected on everything we did, and then I wrote the book, and that was kind of how it came about, really, from the Czech coach saying, "How? How are you here?"
When you became head coach, did you have that in your head? This is my game plan. This is my clear plan method. Did it just evolve?
It was a bit more, definitely more iterative than that. Although I had read, because I wasn't going to take on the job, because it's quite a lot, when you've got a business and you're trying to do that part-time. And, so for me, I really wanted to think it through, and I'm annoyed myself, but I saw Sir Clive Woodward at an event once, and I didn't go and speak to him, but he's probably the reason why I took the job, because I'd read Winning, and I woke up at 2:00 in the morning and started planning everything, writing out everything, some of the kind of roadmap, if you like. And then I called the team manager and said, "Yeah, I'll take the job." So I owe a lot to Sir Clive Woodward, because I thought that some of the things he talked about really resonate with me. So I'd had some sort of plan, but the plan got kind of torn up because I was met with so much resistance from the players initially that I had to really rethink my approach. And a big part of that was this ask, don't tell, rather than me thinking I had to have all the answers. Yeah. And putting that pressure on myself. And it was so empowering to kind of just throw it out there and say, how do we do this?
Yeah. And I think that, when you're coaching, like, the kind of coaching I do, which is mostly one-to-one, is that I don't come up with the answers.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's, people, you could say that to your clients to begin with, look, I don't have the answers. And they'll sit there and they'll be like, shit, what am I doing here? But, but
it takes a bit of time to learn to be coached like that, because you do get the rabbit in the headlights. Sometimes especially when rookies came in, and I would say to them, what do you think we need to do right here now? Yeah. And then they'd be looking at me going, but you're the coach, I'm just my first year on the team, and I'm like, no, let's have a guess, try it, let's do that. So I think there's learning to be coached in that way. And then for the coach, the head coach, is the biggest challenge is patience. Yeah. Because it requires a lot of patience. And if you think you're patient, just 10x that patience, and you'll be close to getting there.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm not the most patient person. I'm great with my one-to-one stuff, but I don't think I would want to coach an athletic team in that way at all. So I'll take my hat off to you for that, because challenge. It's an absolute challenge.
Moments, trust me.
So what's I'm conscious of time, and I don't want to keep you any longer than I promised, although I already have. What's sum up for me? We talk about winning mindset a lot. I'm not necessarily a performance coach. I'm a life coach, and I help athletes and high achievers deal with life as a whole, them as a human being, before their business, before their sport or whatever. That's more my thing. But you do talk about winning mindset. Is that what you've just summed up for us before, or is there another aspect to it? What does it take to have a winning mindset, and to be a high achiever, to be an elite athlete?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think I'm probably more towards where your focus is when I talk about winning mindset. It's not about being bold, ruthless, getting your elbows up, racing to the front. I think it's more selfless than that. I think it's being open to change. It's about managing risk. And those three areas that I talked about: clarity of purpose, I'm here to serve; clarity of self, staying in your lane. I put a post out today, play to your strengths. The best athletes I've seen play to their strengths. They don't deviate from that. There's a small percentage in the top who are able, just got the Ronaldos of the world, they've just got that different, Messi, whatever, whoever you want to, Conor McDavid in hockey. But the majority of professional athletes, they just follow the process. And they do it really, really well. They know what they're gifted to do. And they found their lane. And I think that's the same in all walks of life. With either CEO or into humanitarian work, what you bring to the game and stick. So I think there's definitely something in that. I think the final thing for me is the ability to focus on the positive rather than the negative, to not get wound up about things that are outside of your control and just focus on what you can influence. For me, really do connect with what a winning mindset is. And you could argue that maybe that's, aligned with some of the Carol Dweck's work on mindset and growth mindset. But for me, that's the difference, is that ability to focus on in the moment as well, under pressure. Again, clarity under pressure, be able to focus on what can I influence right now that's going to help us get the result, rather than worrying about what's out of our control and getting too focused on that.
Controlling the controllables.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great book, by the way, Carol Dweck, Mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
A really, really good book. So yeah, anyone listening to that, you need to go get that book. It is a great book. Andrew, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. I would like to talk to you more. Actually, I want to know more about your life and what's going on in Prague. And
part two.
Part two. We need to do it again. What have you written anything recently? Have you got a new book?
My most recent book is The 4 Keys, which was published in 2019. So that's how to win in your business, body, relationships, and mindset. And if people go to andrewsillitoe.com as kind of a starting point, you can kind of navigate where you want to go from there, whether it's to my blog or my podcast. It's you can start there.
Yeah, and I've checked all of that. Obviously, I'd certainly recommend everyone else does. Great podcast. By the way, I love your website. Really slick. Thank
you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for giving up some of your time today to talk to us. Really interesting to speak to the first pro inline hockey player. I forget the title, but it's the first British
player. Yeah, there you go.
That's it. First, I missed out the word British. Yeah, but it's really interesting and to see that journey that it took you along. So I really appreciate you coming and sharing that with us today. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Pleasure. Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome. Cheers. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Real Life Sports Show. I hope you found some value and joy in this podcast. If you have, then please tell someone else about it. And also, while you're at it, why not leave me a 5-star review? Also, you can share it on your socials. You'll find me mostly on Instagram at Sam Adams Coach. You can also check me out at my website, sam-adams.com. Send any comments or any interest in coaching or speaking to my Instagram. Just drop me a DM. I look at all my messages and I respond to every single one of them.